So we're going to cover this whole book tonight. It's only 2 chapters. It's a shorty, but it's pretty loaded. All right, now I've gone through 56 years of my life saying Haggai. Guess what? It's Kagahi. Kagahi. Yeah, you see the H sound, the H in the Hebrew always, it has a CH sound, a K sound really. It's Kagahi. That's how you say it. That was his name. I'm gonna continue with the Kagahi. I'll throw in a Haggai in there every once in a while so you know who I'm talking about, but he was an important prophet in Elohim's overall plan for Israel. This book was written about 15 years after the time of the decree for Israel or Judah to return to their land from that Babylonian captivity. Now, he was one of 2 prophets, along with Zechariah, who encouraged this returning remnant to rebuild the temple. There were numerous difficulties in performing this task, but Kagahi is there as a motivator. He is a motivator for the people. The date for this book is about 520 BC. Prophets of Israel dated their writings by the current king in Israel or the current king in Judah. But at this time, however, there's no king in Israel. There's no king in Judah. So the writing was dated according to the Gentile king who was named Darius, or Hystaspes was what he would go by also. Other prophets use this Gentile labeling of time after that time of the Babylonian captivity, because you can't line it up, with any king in Israel or Judah. The theme of Kagahi is the temple. The reconstruction and refurbishing of the temple, that was the passion of this guy. That's what he wanted to get across. We've got to do this. And his message is very simple. Get to work. There's work to do. We got to get some work done. Got to get something done. Do what he says. The attitude of not doing the instructions of Elohim is just wickedness. Both James and Kagahi say that our faithfulness to Elohim is measured by our works. Now, Kagahi's contemporary was Zechariah. They were in this together. Zechariah was a visionary, and he gave Judah his writings of apocalyptic prophecy, and they were truly amazing. And I'll bet that Kagahi and Zechariah knew each other, and they were a good combination. And now Kagahi, he's a man of action, and we're not told much about him having much in the way of prophecy, a little bit, but not much. But Zechariah, he had vision. Boy, did he have vision. But he wasn't the cheerleader that Kagahi was. The 2 were a pretty good team assembled by Elohim. And there are 2 key verses here that describe the direction of Kagahi's message. And that's in chapter 1, verse 8. Go up to the mountains, bring wood, and rebuild the temple, that I may be pleased with it and be glorified. Thank you. And be glorified, says Yahweh. Also, verse 14. So Yahweh stirred up the spirit of Zerubbabel and the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and the spirit of Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest, and the spirit of all the remnant of the people. And they came and worked on the house of the Yahweh of hosts, their Elohim. That's what it's all about. We've got to rebuild this temple. Now, Haggai prophesied to the remnant here after that long captivity, 70 long years of captivity, and they returned to Jerusalem, and things aren't easy. Things aren't easy. Things are difficult. And in order to get a full picture of the happenings of this era, we have to consider a lot of the prophets. Daniel, Esther, Ezra, Nehemiah, Kagahi, Zechariah, and Malachi. And then you put them all together, and you pretty much get a picture of what was going on. Just taking one of these books by itself it's not going to be easy to do. This cluster of books, that'll constitute an aid to our understanding here. Now, both Haggai and Zechariah were challenging and encouraging the returning remnant of the people. We read about it in Ezra. Where'd it go? Oh, Ezra got raptured. You know that happens. Ezra in Ezra 5:1 and 2 and in Ezra 6:14 mentions both of those guys, because Ezra is a part of that group that went back too. So he mentions both Haggai and Zechariah. So you can look that up. These two guys, they pushed the people into the building the temple and helped them do it. Let's take a look at Haggai 1, verse 1. In the 2nd year of Darius the king, on the 1st day of the 6th month, the word of Yahweh came by the prophet Haggai to Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest, saying. Now, okay, real simple to date this book. And I told you it's right around 520 BC, but it's probably late August, early September. And Haggai tells us the word of Yahweh came by Haggai. And Haggai uses this reference often in this little book. He's not telling us his opinion, okay? He's not telling us what he thinks. He's giving us the word of Elohim himself. Now, Zerubbabel was appointed by Cyrus to be governor of Judah. And Zerubbabel was grandson of Jehoiakim, who was in the line of David. Now, Joshua was the son of Jehozadak, who was the high priest at the time of the Babylonian invasion, some 70-odd years earlier. Haggai goes straight to the governmental and religious leaders, and he gives his message first to those guys. Now, keep in mind, when they return, when they get out of Babylon, and they're going to Judah, things were tough. They'd been in Babylon 70 years now. And, you know, the Persians weren't treating them bad. The Persians, as a matter of fact, said, you go on home. We're even going to pay for it. Things weren't bad there. Now, think about it. Okay, things aren't that bad now. And we're in a nice, prosperous area. Granted, we're not exactly citizens. We're still kind of slaves. But you want to go out in the wilderness in an area that's been totally destroyed and burnt down and start over? See, that's the problem. They didn't really want to do that. Elohim said they have to do it. But it would require a Herculean effort to overcome these obstacles and these hardships. And here's the thought by a lot of people. That's going to be horrible, tough. That can't be Elohim's will. Okay? That's tough. That's too tough. That can't be his will. We're here. Things are going better. Maybe it's his will we need to stay here. And that's why he needed a prophet to tell them how the hog eats the cabbage, okay? We can't go by how we feel. We can't go by what we think. We have to go by what his word says. You know, the battle cry quickly turned from, as far as the people go, to we must serve Elohim, to, what, you know, what's wrong with the status quo? Is it that bad? Well, they had laid the foundation of the temple. But there was an opposition of a people there when they were trying to rebuild the temple and rebuild the walls. Who was it by? Does anybody remember? They were called the Samaritans. Okay? And they were people from the northern kingdom who had mingled in with the surrounding nations. And they were like half northern Israel and half Gentile nations, or less. Okay? Well, you remember what the issue was between the northern and southern kingdoms? Do you remember what it was? Worshiping. Remember the king of the northern kingdom would not let Israel go down to worship in Jerusalem. Why? They may not come back. That's right, so they weren't allowed. So the question being is, why isn't it still okay? Well, you guys are rebuilding that temple. It's okay to worship wherever you are, like we do. And to make it difficult for them, remember that to rebuild the walls, we read in Nehemiah, with a sword in one hand and a hammer in the other. Why? Because they were being threatened. Well, it's hard to rebuild that stuff anyway from nothing, from a place that's been totally desolated. much less with people attacking you the whole time. And it was the Samaritans. Now, you remember the parable that Yeshua told? The Good Samaritan? That's the people he was talking about. This guy that had attacked the people, belonging to this group that attacks the people, that hates those people, that hates the people of Judah, ends up being the one that's following Torah and loving his brother. Well, the Samaritans are a problem. They're a problem. Let's look at verse 2. Thus says the Yahweh of hosts. This people says, the time has not come, even the time for the house of Yahweh to be rebuilt. You know, the book of Nehemiah tells us that Judah encountered this fierce opposition. And once again, we're going back to these Samaritans. But, you know, it's so tough now. We're getting attacked. It must not be Elohim's will, right? Well, look at Elohim. He normally calls Israel my people. Judah, my people. What's he say here? Thus, this people says, not my people. These people are saying this. They're covering their disobedience with excuses. And you know what they say about excuses? Everybody's got one. That doesn't help. Let's look at verses 3 and 4. Then the word of Yahweh came by Haggai the prophet, saying, it's time for you yourselves to dwell, or is it time for you yourselves to dwell in your paneled houses while this house lays desolate? You know, those who had said it's not yet time to build Elohim's house, those people that said that, they built their own. Okay? They had their house built. They saw the time was right to do that. And the paneled houses spoken of here refer to panels that were built for very nice homes. The people had built their own luxurious houses, and they had neglected this house of Elohim for 15 years. Did the people encounter those same problems when they built their own houses? Probably. Yeah, they probably did. It didn't, you know, but in building their own houses, it didn't stop them. See, that's what's interesting here. Didn't stop them from building their own houses, even though it was difficult. Their lame excuse was it must not be Elohim's will to build the temple because it's too difficult. Well, notice where Haggai says the word is coming from again. It's coming from Elohim himself. These are not the words of Haggai. And this guy Haggai is not going to win a popularity contest. If they were to vote for president, Haggai would be so many points behind, insert her name here, because he wouldn't be popular. He would not be popular. He's not telling the people what they want to hear. Well, that's the thing about, which would you rather have? A really nice stereo for your house or a great big loud alarm clock? Which one do you really need? Which one do you want? I want the stereo. That's correct. Alarm clocks, is that your most hated appliance that you have? It is for me. I hate that thing. Wish I could do without it. But you know, the prophets and the apostles, they never were popular. Okay, they never were carried on the shoulders by the townspeople and paraded around town and talked about how wonderful they were and given the keys to the city, given a day in their honor. Yeah, what they were done is essentially tarred and feathered or beheaded and killed and so on and so forth. Now, Haggai's method is not used much today, but it would work if it did. Got to get it done. Verse 5 now, therefore, thus says the Yahweh of hosts, consider your ways. Boy, that's a short little phrase. It's a really good one, okay? That's put that to memory. Consider your ways. Most people you know, and most people I know, reject Elohim and his ways. Okay? That's just the way it is. It's people wanting, it's Frank Sinatra. They want to do it my way. Beautiful song, eh? Well, when he sings it, I could ruin it for you if you want me to right now. You'd never want to hear it again. Well, the people didn't see their own ways, okay? They didn't see it. Elohim had to give an unbiased perspective to his prophet and send it to the people with this message. Verse 6, you've sown much but harvest little. You eat, but there's not enough to be satisfied. You drink, and there's not enough to become drunk. You put on clothing, but no one is warm enough. He who earns wages to put into a purse with holes. That's, and then verse 7. I don't think verse 7 is there. Nope. Let me read you verse 7. It's connected there with verse 6. Thus says the Yahweh of hosts, consider your ways. Well, Elohim was judging them concerning their material things. Now, why do you think none of these material things were working out for them? Why do you think that is? Because they weren't considering their ways. They weren't following Elohim. That's the reason. Elohim will judge and deal with his children. In Hebrews 12, verse 7, it is for discipline that you endure. Elohim deals with you as with sons. For what son is there whom his father does not discipline? When Elohim disciplines us, there's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. A lot of time, yeah. Right? How can you, what's the, is that righteous to discipline someone if there's no rules? If your two sons are throwing a football in the living room and you watch them throw the football around the living room, you know that lamp is a target and you know it's going to go down, don't you? It's just a matter of a short amount of time, right? Now, if you watch them throwing that football around and then that lamp breaks, why, you just beat the tar out of them, don't you? No. You didn't tell them they can't do it. Now, if you tell them they can't do it, and if you do it, you're going to get whipped. Well, then that's just. That's just when that lamp breaks and then things get smacked and then you got to stay in the corner or go to your room. That's justified. But if there's no rules, punishment can't be given. Kind of like that tree of knowledge of good and evil. Right. Yep, that's right. Well, the people of Israel were experiencing crop failure due to famine. They had very little money to buy clothes and food. They had no money in the bank. The bank accounts were near zero. But they never attributed these things to their disobedience. Difficulties come for a purpose. Elohim doesn't let anything happen unless there's a purpose. I mean, things look crazy in the world right now. Things are utter chaos right now. But they're really not. Elohim is in complete control, and he has a purpose behind all this, what looks like utter chaos. It's going to have dire consequences to a lot of us. There's a purpose. We should consider our ways. In Proverbs 14, verse 12, there is a way which seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. I mean, we've got a good portion of people that in this country and that that their ways seem right. They seem right to them. Social justice, homosexuality, and gay marriage. Now it's going to cop killing. What is this nonsense? And killing each other. And it's not even talked about. The heck? It's ridiculous. Well, that's where it's at. This is where it's going. Okay? We're not exempt from who's going to be killed in this nonsensical chaos that we've developed for ourselves. The problem with mankind today is we want to go our own way because we see that sexual immorality is just a choice, and we see that we need to kill each other to get a message across, right? That's how we see it. Isaiah 53, verse 6, all of us like sheep have gone astray, but each of us has turned to his own way. But Yahweh has caused the iniquity of us all to fall on him, being Messiah. Now, the word of Elohim has a lot to say about man's ways as opposed to Elohim's ways. In Isaiah 55, starting at verse 7, let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts, and let him return to Yahweh. And he'll have compassion on him and to our Elohim, for he will abundantly pardon. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares Yahweh. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. You know, Yeshua tells us there's only one path that leads to salvation, and it's a little narrow thing. Okay? In Matthew 7, verses 13 and 14, enter by the narrow gate. For the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and many are those who enter by it. For the gate is small and the way is narrow that leads to life, and few are those who find it. So Elohim says, consider your ways. Consider your ways. Verse 8 of Haggai 1. Go up to the mountains, bring wood, and rebuild the temple, that I may be pleased with it and be glorified, says Yahweh. Okay, his command's very simple. It consists of 3 steps. Go to the mountains, bring wood, build the temple. All the people, all they had to do was put Elohim first, and they would have done his will without all this trouble. He's telling the people exactly what must be done. But it's going to be a lot of work. And that's what this little book of Haggai is all about. The problem isn't that the time's not right. The time is right. The problem is they were too lazy, they were too disinterested in being obedient to him and doing what he says. And Elohim does not have a high opinion of lazy people. Proverbs 10:26, like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the lazy one to those who send him. Isn't that the truth? Proverbs 26, starting at verse 13, the sluggard says, there's a lion in the road. A lion is in the open square. Well, you know why he says that. So he doesn't have to go to work. As the door turns on its hinges, so does the sluggard on his bed. The sluggard buries his hand in the dish. He's weary of bringing it to his mouth again. Eating is wearing him out. The sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can give a discreet answer. Isn't that the truth? That is the truth. Well, you know, there's a lot of Christians in the world today that think that Elohim's going to deal with them by some kind of a miracle. But what people don't realize is that more than likely, Elohim isn't going to deal with you and me with some kind of magic trick. Okay? Why did Elohim just say, boop, there's a temple. There we go. Why didn't he do that? Oh, that's one thing. We won't appreciate it. That's right. That's right. He wanted his people to build him one. That's what he wanted. There's in our service to Elohim, there's no shortcut. Okay? There's no shortcut. Just do it. Just do it. You know, the miracles come from the work that you do. That's what happens. The message from Elohim through Haggai to Israel is still applicable today. Get to work. Just do what I say. And this book, it's almost too simple. Go to the mountains, bring down some wood, build the temple. That's it. That's it. Now Elohim's going to tell them why things have been so stinking difficult. Verse 9, you look for much, but behold, it comes to little. When you bring it home, I blow it away. Why, declares the Yahweh of hosts? Because of my house, which lies desolate, while each of you runs to his own house. Well, the people wonder why these difficulties have come upon them. He said, well, while you're busy with all your little schemes, Elohim saw to it that every one of them failed. Why? Because they had all run to their nice little spacious homes, and Elohim's house lay in ruins. See, when we don't have a temple today, the place to put it is occupied, and we are missing blessings from Elohim and a certain amount of a relationship with him because of that. Because we can't fully obey him. Yeshua said, this is the great principle here of this book of Haggai. Let's look at Matthew 6, starting at verse 31. Don't be anxious then, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or with what shall we clothe ourselves? For all these things the Gentiles eagerly seek, for your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. Isn't that what Haggai just said? Yeah? You're making very little money for all the hard work you're doing, and you're putting it in purses with holes in it. Your crop's not coming in. Your wine's not fermenting. I wonder why all that's happening. Because they're not first seeking his kingdom and his righteousness. When we do all that, all these other things will take care of themselves. Verse 10, therefore, because of you, the sky has withheld its dew, and the earth has withheld its produce. They had no crops because they had no rain. Elohim simply stopped the rain from falling on his people. He just made it stop. And they could not produce, and times were difficult. They tried different schemes. They tried different plans. Elohim saw to it that every one of them failed. Moses told Israel, as long as they loved Elohim and obeyed him, they would flourish and prosper. Remember that Deuteronomy 28? Just going to pick a few phrases out of this. Now it shall be that if you will diligently obey Yahweh your Elohim, being careful to do all his commandments, which I command you today, Yahweh your Elohim will set you high above all the nations of the earth. All these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you if you will obey Yahweh your Elohim. Isn't that what Yeshua just said? He just said that in Matthew 6. Blessed you shall be in the city, blessed you shall be in the country. Blessed shall be the offspring of your body. Blessed shall be your basket, your kneading bowl. Yahweh will cause your enemies who rise up against you to be defeated before you. They shall come out against you one way and shall flee before you in 7 ways. Yahweh will establish you as a holy people to himself, as he swore to you, if you will keep the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim and walk in his ways. And Yahweh will make you abound in prosperity. Yahweh will open for you his good storehouse, the heavens, to give rain to your land. Yahweh shall make you the head and not the tail. And you shall be above, you shall not be underneath, if you'll listen to the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, which I charge you today to observe them carefully. Do not turn aside from any of the words which I command you today, to the right or to the left, to go after the other gods and serve them. Now, the promise was given to Israel, but if you keep going in this passage, now I'm not positive, because I don't have the next verse up there, but I'm almost positive what the next word is in the next verse. Close. It's a conjunction. But if you don't obey my laws, commandments, statutes, and ordinances that I'm commanding you today, and then he goes down a big list of really bad things. Verse 11. And I called for a drought on the land, on the mountains, on the grain, on the new wine, on the oil, on what the ground produces, on men, on cattle, and on all the labor of your hands. Elohim's claiming complete responsibility for the problems of Israel. Now, you want to look at who to blame? Look no further. Here I am. Now we get the answer of the people to Elohim's challenge. Verse 12. Now, Then Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest, with all the remnant of the people, obeyed the voice of Yahweh their Elohim, and the words of Haggai the prophet, as Yahweh their Elohim had sent him, and the people showed reverence for Yahweh. Haggai records that all the people obeyed the voice of Yahweh and showed reverence to his commands. That's what he wanted. 1 Samuel 15:22, and Samuel said, has Yahweh as much delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of Yahweh? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed than the fat of rams. They also feared Elohim. They feared him. Proverbs 9:10, the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. To fear him is to walk in his commandments. Deuteronomy 5:29, oh, that they had such a heart in them that they would fear me and keep my commandments always, that it may be well with them and with their sons forever. Deuteronomy 6, the first 3 verses. Now this is the commandment, the statutes, and the judgments which Yahweh your Elohim has commanded me to teach you, that you might do them in the land where you're going over to possess it, so that you and your son and your grandson might fear Yahweh your Elohim, to keep all his statutes and his commandments, which I command you, all the days of your life, so that your days may be prolonged. O Israel, you should listen and be careful to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may multiply greatly, just as Yahweh, the Elohim of your fathers, has promised you in a land flowing with milk and honey. And lastly, Deuteronomy 8:6, therefore you shall keep the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in his ways and fear him. Keeping the commandments is how you walk in his ways and fear him. Haggai 1:13, then Haggai, the messenger of Yahweh, spoke by the commission of Yahweh to the people, saying, I am with you, declares Yahweh. Elohim says he's with them. He's with them. This promise of his presence and knowing him rests upon our obedience to his Torah. Him being with us and him knowing us and us knowing him rests upon our obedience to his Torah. You've heard this one before, 1 John 2, starting at verse 3. By this we know that we've come to know him, if we keep his commandments. The one who says, I've come to know him, and does not keep his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever keeps his word, in him the love of Elohim has truly been perfected. By this we know that we are in him. The one who says he abides in him ought himself to walk in the same manner as he walked. Beloved, I'm not writing a new commandment to you, but an old commandment which you've had from the beginning. The old commandment is the word which you've heard. Verse 14, so Yahweh stirred up the spirit of Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and the spirit of Yehoshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest, and the spirit of all the remnant of the people, and they came and worked on the house of the Yahweh of hosts, their Elohim. Elohim entered into their spirits, entered into their hearts and minds, gave them an enthusiasm and a desire to do his will. What's that sound like? It's like the new covenant. That's an example of it. Hebrews 13, verses 20 and 21. Now the Elohim of peace, who brought up from the dead the great shepherd of the sheep through the blood of the eternal covenant, even Yeshua, our master, equip you in every good thing to do his will. You know, if you read over that, you're going to skip that part. Working in us that which is pleasing in his sight, which is what? Well, being obedient to his Torah. Through Yeshua, Messiah, who's the mediator of that covenant. To whom be the glory forever and ever. Amen. Verse 15, on the 24th day of the 6th month in the 2nd year of Darius, the king. So the first message was given approximately September 1st, 520 BC. The second message is approximately September 24th of that same year. The people got the message that Elohim would be with them 24 days after they got off their lazy butts and worked for him. His second message is, I am with you. I'm with you. The people all worked hard. They worked together. Elohim was pleased, and he was glorified. Now for chapter 2, it won't take as long, but we're going to see the discouragement of the people and the encouragement of the Father. The temple built by the people, so this is the thing. Remember Solomon's temple, reading about it, when how beautiful and ornate, and how much gold and silver was in it, and brass, and how beautiful it was, and how expensive it was? Well, this thing they put up in 24 days, from timber they brought down from the mountains, not so much. Okay, not so much. But they still have a lot of enthusiasm. Elohim is going to respond to those that say, though, you know, there's people, we're talking like 80, 85 years earlier. There are people that were, say, 90, 95 years old looking at this temple, and they remembered Solomon's temple that he built. What do you think they're thinking? Really? Is this the best you young'uns can do? The beauty will come from the presence of the Father. Very good. Very good. Well, Elohim's going to respond to their discouragement, too. Verse 1 of chapter 2, and on the 21st of the 7th month, the word of Yahweh came by Haggai the prophet. Now, the people, they've worked 24 days since that they last heard a word of encouragement. They got a lot of enthusiasm when Elohim said, I'm with you. The temple's is starting to take shape. The 21st day of the 7th month. The 21st day of the 7th month. What's happening at that time? The 21st day of the 7th month. The 7th month is what? This is Sukkot time. That's correct. Sukkot time. That's what this is. We're talking the last day of Sukkot. All right? The next day is going to be a day of no work, a Sabbaton. Verse 2. Speak now to Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, the governor of Judah, and to Yehoshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest, and to the remnant of the people. Now, this message going to the same guys the first message went to. The government and religious leadership are going to get it. And we're going to hear about the second hurdle that Haggai had to clear. Verse 3. Who is left among you who saw this temple in its former glory? How do you see it now? Does it not seem to you like nothing in comparison? You know, that's what happened. The people remembered. Some people were alive to see this other one, and they're looking at this one, and this looks like a shanty compared to what they had before. The monetary value of Solomon's temple would have been, in that day, probably around $20 million. Well, if you take that $20 million and appreciate it at a rate of about 1% a year since then, you end up with about, 5 with 19 zeros behind it. How's that? That's a lot. That's a lot. It wasn't a huge structure, but the amount of gold, silver, brass, and jewels in it boggled the imagination. So, the book of Ezra gives us more detail of what was happening at this point. Ezra is at the same time, keep in mind. Ezra 3, starting at verse 8, now in the second year of their coming to the house of Elohim at Jerusalem, in the second year, Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Yehoshua, the son of Jehozadak. Does that sound familiar? Those two guys, you familiar with them now? And who their daddies were? And the rest of their brothers, the priests and the Levites, all who came from the captivity to Jerusalem, began the work and appointed the Levites from 20 years and older to oversee the work of the house of Yahweh. Then Yeshua and his sons and brothers stood united with Kadmiel and his sons, the sons of Judah and the sons of Henadad, with their sons and brothers, the Levites, to oversee the workmen in the temple of Elohim. Now when the builders had laid the foundation of the temple of Yahweh, the priests stood in their apparel with trumpets, and the Levites, the son of Asaph, with cymbals to praise Yahweh according to the directions of King David of Israel. And they sang, praising and giving thanks to Yahweh, saying, for he is good, for his loving kindness is upon Israel forever. And all the people shouted with great shout, and they praised Yahweh, because the foundation of the house of Yahweh was laid. That was just the foundation and a few uprights. And the party started. The people celebrated. But in the background, murmur, murmur. That word murmur. If everyone starts saying murmur, murmur in here, you know where the term comes from. It sounds like a bunch of murmuring. Well, that's what was happening. If you go to the next two verses here. Yet, many of the priests and Levites and of the heads of fathers' households, the old codgers who had seen the first temple, wept with a loud voice when the foundation of this house was laid before their eyes, while many shouted aloud for joy. So that the people could not distinguish the shout of joy from the sound of the weeping of the people. For the people shouted with a loud shout, and the sound was heard far away. The internal criticism was dampening the celebration and the enthusiasm. Verse 4. Now take courage, Zerubbabel, declares Yahweh. Take courage also, Yehoshua, son of Jehozadak, the high priest. And all you people of the land, take courage, declares Yahweh, and work. For I am with you, says the Yahweh of hosts. Take courage. Take courage. That's a simple message, but it's very important. In Joshua 1, starting at verse 6, be strong and courageous, for you shall give this people possession of the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous. Be careful to do according to all the Torah which Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, so that you may have success wherever you go. The book of the Torah shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you'll make your way prosperous, and then you'll have success. Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous? Do not tremble or be dismayed, for Yahweh your Elohim is with you wherever you go. 1 Chronicles 22:13, then you shall prosper if you are careful to observe the statutes and ordinances which Yahweh commanded Moses concerning Israel. Be strong and courageous, do not fear, nor be dismayed. Elohim told the same message through Zechariah at the same time frame. Zechariah 8:9, thus says the Yahweh of hosts, let your hands be strong, you who are listening in these days to these words from the mouth of the prophets. Those who spoke in the day that the foundation of the house of the Yahweh of hosts was laid, to the end that the temple might be built. Well, the message to the people, get to work. He has two commands for the people now, be strong and work. Verse 5, for the purpose which I made you when you came out of Egypt, my spirit is abiding in your midst. Do not fear. Do not fear. He told Zechariah the same thing, same prophet, in the same era, the same place. It'll come about, in Zechariah 8, starting in verse 13, that just as you were a curse among the nations, O house of Judah and a house of Israel, so that I will save you, that you may become a blessing. Do not fear, let your hands be strong. For thus says the Yahweh of hosts, just as I purposed to do harm to you when your fathers provoked me to wrath, says the Yahweh of hosts, and I have not relented, so I have again purposed in these days to do good to Jerusalem and to the house of Judah. Do not fear. Verse 6, for thus says the Yahweh of hosts, once more in a little while, I'm going to shake the heavens and the earth, the sea also, and the dry land. You know what the point is here? Our problem is, usually, we can't see further than the end of our nose. He said, I have a greater purpose. It's further up. Okay? Keep your mind on that. And don't worry about these little obstacles in front of you. Once more in a little while, I'm going to shake the heavens and the earth, the sea also, the dry lands. Well, for starters, he did just that. The Greek Empire defeated the Persian Empire just a few decades after Haggai's writing. Now, Elohim's going to describe how he's coming in judgment here in the future. He says, and I'll shake all the nations, and they'll come with the wealth of all nations. And I will fill this house with glory, says the Yahweh of hosts. So he's going to fill this house. You know, there's a series of houses, though. We had the tabernacle of Moses, built in the time of Moses. We had the temple that was built by Solomon. and his people. We have this one. And this one, by the way, whether you're familiar with it or not, this was the basis of Herod's temple. He really just built around this one, expanded it, made it more ornate and more beautiful. It's all the same, but that one even was destroyed in 70 AD by Titus the Roman. Yes, exact same spot. All which is where the tabernacle rested finally when it rested. Same place. The book of Ezekiel speaks of a temple that's going to be in the future after Elohim returns, or Yeshua returns. Elohim says they'll become the wealth of all the nations. Now, he's going to fill this temple with glory. You see, he's talking about that spot. That spot is what's important. Not the wood or the gold or the silver or the marble. That's not what's important. It's that spot. It's going to be filled with greater glory than in Solomon's day. You'll see that in verse 9. Verse 8. The silver is mine and the gold is mine, declares the Yahweh of hosts. Well, silver and gold have always been the wealth of the nations. It used to be, well, it should be, and it used to be, the monetary basis for the entire world. Elohim says it's all his, and it's going to adorn the temple in the last days. Verse 9, the latter glory of this house will be greater than the former, says the Yahweh of hosts. In this place I shall give peace, declares the Yahweh of hosts. So that glory in the latter days is going to be greater than the glory that previously was there. He's not referring to the building itself. He's referring to, well, as a matter of fact, the building itself is going to be better too. But the temple location, that's referred to as the house of Yahweh. Yeshua referred to even the temple that Herod built as Elohim's house. Matthew 21, verses 12 and 13, and Yeshua entered the temple and cast out all those who were buying and selling in the temple, and overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who were selling doves. And he said to them, it is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you're making it a robber's den. In this place, he says, I shall give peace. Let's go to verse 10. On the 24th of the 9th month, in the 2nd year of Darius, the word of Yahweh came to Haggai the prophet. Now, Haggai is giving a very important principle now in this 4th message. He gives it in late December, 520 BC. The previous message was given 2 months earlier. Verse 11, thus says the Yahweh of hosts, ask now the priest for a ruling. If a man carries holy meat in the fold of his garment and touches bread with this fold, or cooked food, wine, oil, or any other food, will it become holy? And the priest answered and said, no. Then Haggai said, if one who is unclean from a corpse touches any of these, will the latter become unclean? And the priest answered and said, it will become unclean. Here's the thing. Here's what he's saying. He's asking if holiness, cleanliness, or sanctification can be transferred. The answer is no, it cannot. But uncleanness and defilement can be transferred by the touch. Health is not contagious. Disease is contagious. That's what he's saying. If you take an unclean thing and a clean thing, and you put them together, do they both become clean? What happens? They're both unclean. That's what he's saying. Verse 14, then Haggai he answered and said, so is this people, and so is this nation before me, declares Yahweh. And so is it every work of their hands, and what they offer there is unclean. The disobedience of the people is like that which is unclean and contagious. Verse 15, but now do consider from this day onward, before one stone was placed on another in the temple of Yahweh, From that time, when one came to a grain heap of 20 measures, there would be only 10. When one would come to the wine vat to draw 50 measures, there would be only 20. I smote you and every work of your hands with blasting wind, mildew, and hail. Yet you did not come back to me, declares Yahweh. He told them. He previously had been judging them for their works. Remember, he just said that in the first chapter. You look for much, but behold, it comes little. That's Haggai 1:9. When you bring it home, I'll blow it away. Because of you, the skies withheld its dew, the earth withheld its produce. I called for a drought on the land. It's because of their disobedience. Verse 18 of chapter 2. Do consider from this day onward, from the 24th day of the 9th month, from the day when the temple of Yahweh was founded, consider, is the seed still in the barn? Even including the vine, the fig tree, and the pomegranate, and the olive tree. It has not borne fruit, yet from this day on I will bless you. So their future is going to be a blessing. They would not have to worry. Then the word of Yahweh came to a second time to Haggai on the 24th day of the month, saying, speak to Zerubbabel, the governor of Judah, saying, I'm going to shake the heavens and the earth, and I'll overthrow the thrones of kingdoms and destroy the power of the kingdoms of the nations. And I'll overthrow the chariots and their riders, and the horses with their riders will go down, everyone by the sword of another. On that day, declares the Yahweh of hosts, I will take you, Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, my servant, declares Yahweh, and I'll make you like a signet ring, for I've chosen you, declares the Yahweh of hosts. So Zerubbabel is going to be like a signet. What's a signet? Yeah, it's a design on a ring. Yeah, you put it in clay or wax, and it makes an imprint, and that makes it official. Okay? That makes it official. He's speaking of making the line of Zerubbabel a kingdom which will never end, which, by the way, he's a descendant of David. Because he set his seal upon him. He set his seal upon him. Look at John 6, verses 26 and 27. Yeshua answered them and said, truly, truly, I say to you, you seek me not because you saw signs, but because you ate of the loaves and were filled. Do not work for the food which perishes, but for the food which endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man shall give to you, for on him the Father, even Elohim, has set his seal and authenticated him. Any questions on Haggai? It's quite a little writing. All right, let's pray and we'll be dismissed. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your word once again that you give us from your prophets. It's so applicable to us today to just listen to you, be obedient, do the work that you call out for us. It's a light burden. It's a light yoke, and we pray, Father, that you continue to write your Torah on our hearts and minds as we pray as your humble servants.